The quantum anomaly consumed the Centauri outpost in seconds, where a thriving colony of 30,000 souls had stood moments before. Only emptiness remained. Admiral Zenaval watched the feeds with all four of her optical cores, her crystalline form dimming with each passing moment. This marked the 17th system lost to the entity in under a standard cycle. In the emergency chamber of the Galactic Confederation's central hub, 300 representatives from the most advanced civilizations in known space sat in stunned silence. The chamber, usually a testament to the Confederation's technological supremacy with its quantum-linked displays and psychic enhancement fields, now felt more like a tomb. "The Lambda contingency has failed," Zenaval announced, her voice resonating through the neural networks connecting the assembly. "Our most advanced quantum phase weapons passed through the entity without effect. We cannot fight what we cannot touch." First Speaker Ixal, a being of pure energy contained within an ornate mechanical shell, moved to the center of the chamber. "We have exhausted every weapon in our combined arsenals. Every computational model we've run suggests total galactic consumption within 15 cycles." Murmurs of despair rippled through the assembly. The Confederation represented 50,000 years of combined technological advancement. Their ships could fold space. Their machines could reorganize matter at the atomic level. Their scientists had mapped 11 dimensions. And yet, they stood helpless before this threat. From the shadows of the chamber's upper tier, a voice spoke. "There might be one option we haven't considered." The assembly turned to face Coordinator Reth, the head of the Xenological Studies Division. The arthropodal being's carapace reflected the chamber's dim light as it descended to the speaking floor. "Speak, Coordinator," First Speaker Ixal commanded, though there was little hope in their harmonic voice. "In the outer spiral arm of the galaxy, there exists a species we've been observing for the past 300 cycles." Reth began, activating a holographic display. Images of a blue-green world appeared, followed by scenes of its inhabitants. "They call themselves humans." The chamber erupted in dismissive sounds. "The primitives," someone called out. "They've barely achieved rudimentary spaceflight. They still use chemical rockets." Another voice added. Reth raised their primary appendages for silence. "Yes, their technology is primitive by our standards. But consider this." The holographic display shifted, showing various moments from human history. They achieved powered flight to landing on their moon in less than 70 years. They went from simple mechanical computers to quantum processing in less than a century. Their rate of technological advancement is unprecedented. Admiral Zenaval moved closer to the display, her crystalline form analyzing the data. "What makes you think they could help us face this crisis?" "Because," Reth explained, "humans excel at exactly what we failed at, thinking outside established parameters. Our civilization's greatest strength, our accumulated knowledge and established scientific principles, has become our weakness. We can't conceive of solutions that contradict what we know to be true." The display showed more images, humans creating art, building machines, solving problems in unexpected ways. Humans, however, thrive on contradictions. They imagine the impossible, then find ways to make it possible. They create solutions that shouldn't work, yet somehow do. First Speaker Ixal's energy form pulsed skeptically. "You're suggesting we pin the survival of galactic civilization on a species that hasn't even unified their own planet." "I'm suggesting," Reth countered, "that we need a perspective completely different from our own. The entity we face operates outside our understanding of physical laws. Perhaps we need a species that routinely challenges such laws." The chamber fell silent as the implications settled in. Contact with pre-unified civilizations was strictly forbidden under Confederation law. The risks of cultural contamination and technological misuse had been thoroughly documented over millennia. Admiral Zenaval's crystalline form brightened slightly. "The laws of contact were created to protect developing civilizations. But if we fail to stop this entity, there won't be any civilizations left to protect." First Speaker Ixal moved to the center of the chamber. Even if we agree to this unprecedented action, how do we approach them? How do we convince them to help? Reth manipulated the display again, showing scenes of human emergency responses, disaster relief, and international cooperation. In our observations, we've noted that humans have a remarkable tendency to help others in crisis, even at great risk to themselves. They call it doing the right thing. The image is shifted to show humans rescuing others from dangerous situations, providing aid during disasters, and working together to overcome challenges. They possess a concept they call heroism, the willingness to face impossible odds to help others. If we approach them honestly, show them the true scope of our crisis, they might just try to save the galaxy. Admiral Zeneval finished, her form brightening with the first hope she'd felt since the crisis began. First Speaker Ixel's energy form swirled in contemplation. The Assembly will vote. The question before us: do we break our most fundamental law of non-interference and seek humanity's help? The Chamber's voting systems activated. Each representative had to weigh not just the immediate crisis, but thousands of years of established protocol against an uncertain gamble on an unproven species. The results appeared in the Chamber's central display. By a margin of just 7 votes, the motion passed. Prepare a first contact team. First Speaker Ixel commanded. We need their best minds, their most innovative thinkers. Time is against us. As the Assembly dispersed to begin preparations, Reth remained, studying the images of Earth. I hope, they whispered to themselves, that humans are everything we think they are, everything we need them to be. In high orbit above Earth, automated Confederate sensors recorded humanity's first steps into deeper space, their crude but effective vessels pushing further into the solar system. Soon, those sensors would transmit a message that would forever change humanity's destiny. The message would be simple, direct, and honest. People of Earth, we need your help. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the United Nations emergency session, her heart pounding as she faced the assembled world leaders. The holographic message from the Galactic Confederation floated behind her, its alien script now translated into Earth's major languages. As the head of Earth's quantum physics initiative, she had been chosen to lead humanity's response team. The entity you're describing, she said, her voice steady despite her nervousness, appears to be a quantum phase anomaly operating on principles we've only theorized about. It's consuming matter at the subatomic level, converting entire star systems into something else. Something else. The UN Secretary-General leaned forward. Can you be more specific, Dr. Chen? Sarah ran her hand through her short black hair, a habit when she was thinking deeply. Based on the data they shared, the matter isn't being destroyed. It's being transformed into a state of existence we don't have words for yet. It's like, imagine trying to explain a third dimension to a being that only knows two. In the back of the chamber, James Rodriguez, a theoretical physicist from Argentina, raised his hand. The Confederate scientists have technologies we can barely dream of, yet they've failed to stop this thing. What makes anyone think we can help? Sarah smiled. Because sometimes the most advanced solution isn't the right one. Remember the Afghan farmers who introduced NASA to the ancient technique of underground irrigation systems for Mars colonies, or how studying spider webs led to breakthrough in quantum computing. The chamber buzzed with quiet discussion. The Secretary-General raised his hands for silence. Dr. Chen, you have a proposal. Yes. Sarah activated her own holographic display, showing a complex diagram. The Confederation has been trying to stop this entity with pure force, hitting it with everything they have. But their weapons, advanced as they are, all operate on conventional quantum principles. What if we try something more primitive? The display shifted to show a simple wave pattern. Sometimes, the simplest solutions are the ones we overlook. We don't need to destroy the entity. We just need to change its behavior. In the orbital meeting station assembled by the Confederation, Coordinator Reth watched the human scientists work with a mixture of fascination and confusion. Their methods seemed chaotic, inefficient, even primitive, Yet they were making progress where centuries of advanced Confederate science had failed. Sarah Chen stood at a whiteboard, an actual physical surface written on with markers, something that made several alien scientists cringe. She was drawing diagrams, erasing them, drawing new ones, all while carrying on rapid conversations with her team. "Look," she said, pointing to a particular equation, "if we consider the entity not as a weapon or an invader, but as a natural phenomenon, like a hurricane," interrupted Dr. Maya Patel, an environmental physicist from India. "Complex systems that follow patterns we can predict and potentially influence." Reth's translator struggled to keep up with their rapid exchanges. The humans seemed to jump from topic to topic, making connections that seemed illogical yet somehow led to new insights. First speaker Ixel's energy form pulsed with concern as they observed. "Their methods are unorthodox. That's exactly why we need them." Admiral Zenaval responded, her crystalline form analyzing the humans' work. "They're approaching the problem from angles we never considered." In the corner of the lab, James Rodriguez was working with Dr. Yuki Tanaka from Japan, testing a theory using equipment that seemed absurdly simple compared to Confederate technology. They had requested common materials, water, sand, and some basic electronic components, and were building something that made no sense to the alien observers. "It's like a quantum tuning fork," James explained to anyone who would listen. "We're not trying to destroy the entity. We're trying to make it resonate at a frequency that will force it to change state." Sarah watched their experiment with growing excitement. "The entity exists in a quantum state we can't directly interact with, but what if we could create a harmonic resonance that would draw it into our phase of reality?" "Like using a dog whistle," Maya exclaimed. "We can't hear it, but it affects something that can." The alien scientists exchanged confused looks at these analogies, but they couldn't deny the progress being made. The humans were building a prototype device that operated on principles the Confederation had never considered. As the day wore on, Sarah found herself in a quiet moment with Coordinator Reth. The arthropodal alien had been watching her work for hours. "Your species," Reth observed, "seems to thrive on what we would consider chaos. You embrace uncertainty, make intuitive leaps that defy logic, yet somehow arrive at viable solutions." Sarah smiled. "That's because we've learned that the universe rarely fits into neat, logical boxes. Sometimes you have to think outside them, way outside them, to find answers. And you believe your resonance device will work. Honestly, I don't know." Sarah looked at the prototype her team was building. "But that's the thing about humans. Not knowing something has never stopped us from trying. We'll either find a way to make it work, or we'll keep trying until we find something that does." Reth's translator conveyed a sound that might have been a chuckle. "Perhaps that is exactly what the galaxy needs right now, a species too stubborn to accept impossibility." As night fell on the orbital station, maintained for the humans' comfort, Sarah's team continued working. The prototype was taking shape, a device that looked deceptively simple but incorporated principles from quantum mechanics, chaos theory, and even music theory. It was exactly the kind of solution that would never have occurred to the Confederation scientists. The question remained, would it be enough to stop an entity that was consuming entire star systems? They would soon find out. The entity had just been detected at the edge of a populated system, giving them their first chance to test their theory. The fate of the galaxy might depend on whether humanity's unconventional approach could succeed where advanced alien technology had failed. The Viridian system hung in space like a glittering jewel, its 3 inhabited worlds home to billions of sentient beings. And now, at its outer edges, sensors detected the approaching quantum entity, a void that consumed reality itself. Aboard the Confederate flagship Eternal Light, Sarah Chen watched the final assembly of their device, now scaled up using Confederate technology. What had started as a prototype built from Earth materials had evolved into something that bridged the gap between human intuition and alien engineering. "It looks like a giant meditation bowl," Maya observed, walking around the massive ring-shaped device. Its surface rippled with quantum-sensitive materials, while the internal structure housed what James had dubbed their reality-tuning fork. Admiral Zeneval's crystalline form shifted with uncertainty. "You truly believe this instrument can affect the entity?" "Every complex system has a resonant frequency," Sarah explained, running her hand along the device's smooth surface. "Even quantum systems. The trick isn't to fight the entity. It's to help it find a new stable state." James worked at a control panel, making final adjustments. "Think of it like helping a spinning top find its balance. Right now, the entity is like a top that's wobbling between dimensional states. Our device should help it stabilize." The Confederate scientists still struggled with the humans' reliance on metaphor and analogy, but they had learned to trust their strange insights. The humans had done in weeks what the Confederation couldn't do in months: develop a new approach to the crisis. First Speaker Ixel materialized on the bridge, their energy form crackling with urgency. "The entity has increased speed. It will reach the outer colonies in 6 hours." Sarah nodded to her team. "Then it's time for a field test." She turned to Admiral Zeneval. "We need to position 3 ships in a triangular formation around the entity's predicted path. Each ship will carry a resonator device." 3 ships. The Admiral's form flickered with concern. "The closer we get to the entity, the greater the risk of being consumed by it. The resonance pattern needs to be 3-dimensional, Maya explained. "Like a tripod, the most stable structure in any environment. 1 device might affect the entity, but 3 working in harmony will create a containment field." Throughout the ship, human and alien crew members worked together, loading the resonator devices onto specialized transport vessels. The humans' presence had changed more than just their approach to the crisis. It had transformed how the Confederation operated. Where once there were rigid protocols and hierarchical decisions, now there was room for improvisation and quick adaptation. James coordinated with the alien engineers, showing them how to tune the devices to work in concert. "The key is synchronization," he explained. "All 3 resonators need to hit exactly the same frequency at exactly the same time." Dr. Yuki Tanaka, who had been quietly working on calculations, spoke up. "There's something else we need to consider." She projected a complex mathematical model. "The entity's quantum state is affected by observation. We're not just creating a resonance field. We're essentially going to be quantum observers on a massive scale." Sarah's eyes widened as she understood the implications. The Copenhagen interpretation on a stellar level. The act of measurement affects the thing being measured. "In plain English," Admiral Zeneval requested. "We're not just going to contain the entity," Sarah explained, excitement building in her voice. "By observing it through our resonance field, we might force it to collapse into a single quantum state, one that exists in our reality." The Admiral's crystalline form brightened with understanding. "You mean we could make it something we can actually interact with?" "Exactly." Sarah looked at the tactical display showing the entity's approach. "But timing will be crucial. We'll only get 1 chance at this." As the ships moved into position, Sarah found herself in the Eternal Lights observation dome with Coordinator Reth. The arthropodal alien had become something of a friend during their weeks of work together. "When we first contacted Earth," Reth said, "many thought we were making a mistake, that humans were too primitive, too chaotic to help us." They turned their compound eyes towards Sarah. "But we failed to understand that chaos and primitive forces can have their own kind of wisdom." Sarah watched as the transport ships carrying the resonator devices moved into formation. "That's humanity in a nutshell. We're messy, we make mistakes, we take wrong turns, but we learn from all of it. Every failure is just data for the next attempt." Alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. The entity had increased speed again, its vast nothingness approaching faster than predicted. The transport ships scrambled to get into position, their crews racing against time. "All ships, report status," Admiral Zeneval commanded. "Transport 1, in position. Transport 2, approaching final coordinates. Transport 3, ready and waiting. Sarah took a deep breath, watching the tactical display. Everything they had worked for came down to this moment. If their theory was wrong, if their device failed, the Viridian system would be lost, and Earth might be next. All ships, power up resonator devices, she ordered. Synchronize frequencies on my mark. The massive resonators hummed to life, each one generating a quantum field that existed somewhere between human intuition and alien science. Throughout the Confederation fleet, crews held their breath, watching as the void of the entity approached the trap they had laid. 3 minutes to contact, James reported. Resonance field stable. Sarah gripped the command rail, her knuckles white. Remember, she said to both human and alien crew members, we're not fighting it. We're helping it find balance, like guiding a wave to shore. The entity loomed closer, its impossible darkness preparing to consume another star system. But this time, humanity stood ready to attempt what advanced alien civilizations had thought impossible, not to destroy the darkness, but to transform it. The entity struck the resonance field like a wave hitting a barrier. Space itself seemed to shudder as quantum forces collided. On the bridge of the eternal light, Sarah watched as their instruments struggled to make sense of what was happening. Resonance pattern holding at 87%. James called out, his fingers dancing over the control panels. The entity is responding to the field. Through the ship's quantum-enhanced viewing screens, they could see the impossible. The void that had consumed entire star systems was beginning to change. Where before it had been an absolute darkness, now patterns of light flickered within it, like lightning in a storm cloud. Transport 2 reporting fluctuations in their resonator. Maya's voice was tense. The quantum feedback is stronger than we anticipated. Sarah's mind raced. They had theorized this might happen. The entity wasn't just being contained, it was fighting back. Adjust the harmonic frequency. We need to match its oscillation pattern. Admiral Zenaval's crystalline form pulsed with alarm. The transport ships can't maintain position much longer. The quantum distortions are affecting their drive systems. Sarah watched as the entity writhed within their triangular trap, its form shifting between states of matter and energy. Their plan was working. The resonance field was forcing the entity to interact with normal spacetime, but the cost was proving higher than expected. Transport 2's resonator is failing. The report cut through the chaos like a knife. Field integrity down to 60%. If that ship loses containment, the entire field will collapse, James warned, his hands flying over the controls as he tried to compensate. Sarah made a split-second decision. Transfer power from the Eternal Light's main drive to Transport 2's resonator. We'll enhance their field strength from here. That will leave us vulnerable if the containment fails. First Speaker Ixel warned, their energy form flickering with concern. Sometimes you have to risk everything to save everything. Sarah responded, already implementing her plan. Maya, coordinate with Transport 1 and 3. We need to adjust the resonance pattern to compensate for the power fluctuations. The entity's movements became more erratic as the resonance field fluctuated. Streams of quantum energy lashed out at the surrounding ships, each blast carrying enough power to atomize a small moon. The transport ship's shields, enhanced by Confederate technology, barely held. Look, Yuki pointed to her readings. The entity's quantum state is beginning to stabilize. The resonance is working. But victory was not yet assured. Transport 2's resonator continued to struggle, its power systems pushed beyond their design limits. The crew of the transport ship remained at their posts, knowing they were the only thing standing between the entity and billions of lives. Transport 2's core is going critical. The ship's captain's voice crackled through the comm system. We can't maintain the field much longer. Sarah felt the weight of countless lives on her shoulders. Their plan was working, but they were going to lose 1/3 of their containment field before the process was complete. Unless, Captain, she called to Transport 2, initiate emergency protocol Omega. Abandon ship but leave the resonator running. We'll handle it from here. The transport captain's response was immediate. Understood. It's been an honor. Initiating evacuation. As Transport 2's crew flood in escape pods, Sarah turned to James and Maya. Reroute all power from the evacuated ship's systems to the resonator. Every bit of energy, even life support. Turn that ship into one giant quantum transmitter. The entity sensed the weakness in the field and pressed against it, focusing its assault on Transport 2's position. The unmanned ship groaned under the assault, its hull beginning to buckle. Transport 2's resonator at 120% of designed capacity, James reported. Structure won't hold much longer. It doesn't need to hold much longer, Sarah replied, watching the quantum readings. Look at the entity's waveform. It's nearly. Before she could finish, Transport 2 exploded in a blast of quantum energy. The resonance field wavered, threatening to collapse entirely. Sarah felt her heart stop. If the field failed now, the entity would be free to consume the Viridian system. But something unexpected happened. The explosion of Transport 2's resonator created a quantum cascade effect. The blast of energy, already attuned to the entity's frequency, struck it like a hammer hitting a bell. The entity's quantum state is collapsing. Yuki shouted. It's being forced into a single phase. Through the viewing screen, they watched in awe as the void that had terrorized the galaxy began to transform. The darkness contracted, swirled, and then burst into brilliant light. Where once there had been an all-consuming nothing, now there was something else. By all the stars, Admiral Zeneval whispered, her crystalline form bright with wonder. What is it? Floating in space where the entity had been was a sphere of pure energy, pulsing with colors that human eyes had never seen before. It was contained, stable, and most importantly, no longer consuming reality itself. If I had to guess, Sarah said, studying the readings, I'd say it's what the entity was always meant to be. Not a destroyer, but a creator. We just helped it find its proper form. The bridge erupted in cheers, human and alien voices joining together in celebration. They had done it. Against all odds, using a combination of primitive human intuition and advanced alien technology, they had solved what had seemed an impossible crisis. But as Sarah watched the transformed entity pulse with new life, she knew this was more than just a victory. It was proof that sometimes the greatest solutions come not from overwhelming force or advanced technology, but from understanding, adaptation, and the willingness to try the impossible. One standard galactic year later, the Great Hall of the Confederation looked very different from the chamber that had first voted to contact humanity. Where there had once been rigid hierarchical seating, now representatives mingled freely. Where there had once been pure efficiency, now there was room for creativity and spontaneity. Sarah Chen stood at the center of the hall, still somewhat amazed to be there. Behind her, a holographic display showed the transformed entity, now known as the Genesis Sphere, continuing its peaceful pulsing in the carefully maintained observation zone where they had first contained it. The sphere represents more than just a scientific breakthrough, she addressed the assembly. It represents what we can achieve when we combine different ways of thinking, when we allow ourselves to see problems from new perspectives. First Speaker Ixel's energy form glowed with approval. Indeed, the Genesis Sphere has already taught us more about quantum mechanics in 1 year than we learned in the previous century. Its ability to generate new forms of energy could revolutionize our understanding of the universe. But this session wasn't just about celebrating past victories. Sarah was here to propose something new. That's why I believe it's time to formalize the partnership between Earth and the Confederation. Not as advanced teachers and primitive students, but as equals who bring different strengths to the table. Admiral Zeneval, her crystalline form now bearing the marks of honor from the Genesis crisis, moved forward. The Admiral's Council supports this proposal. Humanity's unconventional thinking has already led to breakthroughs in multiple fields beyond the Genesis project. Around the hall, holographic displays showed some of these achievements. James Rodriguez was leading a team developing new forms of quantum communication based on the resonance principles they'd discovered. Maya Patel had revolutionized Confederate shield technology by applying chaos theory to energy distribution, and Yuki Tanaka's work on quantum observation effects had opened up entirely new fields of study. Coordinator Reth, who had first suggested contacting humanity, clicked their mandibles in satisfaction. When we first observed humans, we saw their chaos as a weakness. Now we understand it was their greatest strength. They don't just think outside conventional boundaries. They question whether those boundaries need to exist at all. The images shifted to show scenes from Earth, where Confederate technology was helping to solve long-standing problems. Clean energy projects were transforming deserts into gardens. Medical advances were curing diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia. And the first joint human-Confederate space stations were under construction in Earth's solar system. But perhaps the greatest change, Sarah continued, has been in how we view the universe itself. The Genesis crisis taught both humans and the Confederation valuable lessons about the nature of progress. She gestured to the Genesis sphere's image. We learned that the most destructive forces can sometimes be transformed rather than destroyed. That what appears to be chaos might actually be a higher form of order we don't yet understand. And most importantly, that true advancement comes not from accumulating knowledge, but from being willing to question it. First Speaker Ixel moved to the center of the hall. The Assembly will now vote on the formal incorporation of Earth into the Galactic Confederation, with full member status and equal representation. Sarah held her breath as the votes were cast. This was different from the desperate vote to contact Earth during the crisis. This was about fundamentally changing how the Confederation operated, about embracing a new way of thinking about civilization itself. The results appeared above the Assembly. Unanimous approval. The hall erupted in celebration. Representatives from 1,000 worlds congratulated each other and their human colleagues. The integration of humanity into galactic society was now official. Later, in a quiet moment, Sarah stood with Coordinator Reth in the observation dome, watching ships come and go from the Confederation hub. Human vessels, with their distinctive designs that somehow merged function with artistry, now moved confidently among the advanced ships of other species. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" Sarah asked. "When you first suggested contacting Earth." Reth's compound eyes reflected the starlight. "I hoped humanity would help us solve the crisis. I never dreamed you would help us solve ourselves." They turned to face her. "Your species reminded us of something we had forgotten in our pursuit of advancement. That progress isn't always about moving forward. Sometimes it's about looking at where you are from a new angle." "That's humanity for you," Sarah smiled. "We've never been good at following the expected path. Sometimes we need to wander off the trail to find the best way forward." Below them, in one of the Confederation's research labs, a team of human and alien scientists was studying data from the Genesis sphere. New theories about the nature of reality were being born from the combination of Confederate precision and human intuition. The quantum entity that had once threatened to destroy the galaxy had become a source of innovation and discovery. And in orbit around Earth, the first classes of human students were beginning their studies at the newly established Confederation Academy. They would learn about advanced technology and ancient wisdom from across the galaxy. But they would also teach their alien classmates about human creativity, about the power of imagination, and about the importance of sometimes ignoring the impossible to find the possible. The crisis that had brought humanity and the Confederation together had passed, but its legacy lived on in every new discovery, every shared innovation, and every moment of understanding between different species. The galaxy had faced extinction and found not just survival, but a new way of thriving. As Sarah watched a group of young human and alien engineers excitedly discussing a new project below, she knew that this was just the beginning. Humanity had answered the call for help, but in doing so, they had helped create something far greater, a future where the best of all species could come together to face whatever challenges the universe might present.